all of a sudden, even if it is, they did mess it up, right? Game's not out. You come out and say, "Oh, guys, I'm sorry, but this isn't working. Like it's not running." And then, of course, I think the response you'd get is, "Oh, you just hate this game. You've always hated this franchise. You hate Sony. You hate like how dare you?" Did you get any kind of vibes on Cyberpunk when that was coming out? Because I remember I talked about it and I was like, guys. Like I just want to set expectations. It's not.
You mean did I worry about it prior to releasing, or do you mean once?
Like within the week, people started getting copies. All of a sudden, like the news is out that it's like this is not a good version, but people had already built it up as this incredible game that they'd never experienced before.
Yeah, I mean, I refused review code because they had courted me to do sponsored stuff for their channel. And I was prepared to do it. Not sponsored. I was going to do free stuff, almost like what we're seeing Christopher Odd do with Marvel, which I think has been doing a great job with Marvel. But I was going to do free stuff, and they contacted me. Their head CEO contacted me, and then about a month and a half prior, I started getting no responses from people.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't realize it until the copies were out. I started getting people saying, I've DM'd CDPR to tell them that you still haven't got a code, because I do have a couple, friends who are reviewers who still want me to review again. We're not worried if you get it and I get it. In fact, it can also be sort of helpful to say, hey, so-and-so agrees with me. And I'm
not alone on this island.
I'm not alone. They were not announcing, or they were not giving it to me. And then about 5 days prior, they're like, do you want it? And by then I was so burnt out on what was going on and their refusal to respond and all this hedgy shit that I refused to accept it. So I got some heat for not liking it, because I think people like Skill Up said it was worth getting, and a couple other people, even though he went on IGN later and was like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have said that. But it's like, but you did. And I didn't. I was like, no, it's not worth getting. So I mean, some people said there were bugs and that it wasn't worth getting, but a lot of people, if you go back and look, a lot of people, I don't know what version of the game they played, but it was not the version of the game I played.
I played the Stadia version and it was great.
You had no issues. Yeah.
All I had
were issues. But I also had issues with the game. I mean, there was no RPG. Like you couldn't even sit and like take a drink. Like things that I think when you hear CD Projekt Red at minimum, but when you also hear of an immersive game, if it doesn't hit those, you start wondering what you're getting. I honestly wish they had stayed in the city and ignored the wildlands and the outer lands and just said, let's just try to get the city working. I think I would have been, I think it would have been a better game if they had done that.
Have you revisited it at all?
Since a couple times for mods, but I'm pretty much, I'll replay some games, but if a game like that hits where there's no immersion in it, there's a lot of games like Deus Ex that I feel do Cyberpunk better than Cyberpunk does. So what I do is I return to Deus Ex all the time. Even Mankind Divided and Human Revolution piss filter game looked like everybody peed on the screen with the yellow filter. I hated that. I play those religiously about once every 6 months all the way through, but I've only returned to Cyberpunk to check out mods.
So you recommended that I got into Elden Ring, and I absolutely just that game's incredible. I need to finish it. Like, well, that's the problem I run into as a gamer with limited time.
It's pretty huge too.
It's a massive game. I'm like, okay. And so would you then recommend like Deus Ex Mankind Divided? I know that was
Deus Ex
under Square Enix, and then they just never really did much with it.
Yeah, dude, Human Revolution as well. It's been patched up, and you can use NVIDIA filters to remove the yellow tint. I just don't like tint in my games. I've always been that way. Fallout does a lot of tint. They love to give you that yellow-green tint, which is what I'm noticing around my headset right now. They love to give you the tint, and I don't know why. I like clean colors. I like to be able to choose the color palette. I don't want the game to choose it for me. BioShock does it. BioShock loves to throw a little bit of blue in there, a little bit of coolness. And there's a lot of psychology about keeping, that is honestly what they want. But I'm not a fan. I'm like, no, man, I want to go in there, and fiddle with it for a little bit. So, but yes, dude, they're not long games, but they're just contained. They do a little bit of city. Some of it's interactive, not as big as you would expect a Cyberpunk to be at all, but well worth playing for the cyber transhumanism of it and all the hacking. it's way more cyberpunk than cyber. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like the skills you get,
Yeah.
you actually get. Like, I don't know how to describe it until you get one and you're like, holy shit, this skill makes a difference in this game. Because what happened in cyberpunk, I get a skill and I'd be like, I'll just shoot him. You know, like I mean, I did use the skill, but it wasn't like what I wanted. But I'm a D&D fan too, and maybe I was a little bit burned by that because I know cyberpunk from role playing, and so I felt that they had a massive IP. And except you can see a tweet I did when they first announced it. I said CD Projekt Red has never proven that they can like nail a game day one that was like, I mean, even Witcher had issues.
Yeah.
And I was like, just because Witcher 3 is good does not mean Cyberpunk will be good. And I got a lot of shit for that. When they first announced Cyberpunk, I was like, I don't know. I know you guys love CDPR, but there's no indication that a shit company won't make a good game and that a good company won't make a shit game.
Yeah.
It absolutely happens all the time. I was going to ask you, how's your partner, your friend, the guy I did the podcast with?
Oh, Chris? Yeah, he's doing good. He's so he does handles most of the streaming on Work to Game, and so like he's doing really good. We've been like restructuring some of our content. Like we've got the 2 podcasts. I've decided, I was like, what do I want this podcast to be? And I'm like, I really like the one-on-one, like the sitting down with like another creator and just kind of chewing on a subject or a handful of something related to a specific game. And it's actually the nice thing about it is much easier to be scheduled. Like we were trying to do the 4-person round table, and it's like, okay, we got this. Does this work for y'all? And then I found myself.
You and I want to say something, and you got a third person who doesn't agree with us, and suddenly, you like, if I have a thought or you have a thought, then it can get clouded because somebody's like, well, I don't agree with that or whatever. And
you know what was really interesting, and we got some good feedback, and I never dawned on me, but there was a perception issue because we would invite people onto the podcast in 3, and being that Chris has his own like channel and we share this like the Work to Game channel, like as this collab. That's what we envisioned it to always be, as a very collaborative discussion based channel, and that's what it is. But what people found out is that, let's say because we've had you on that podcast specifically, the feedback we get is that people feel like it's 2 people interviewing 1 person because they keep seeing us do that shared content all the time, and then all of a sudden there's somebody new comes in, and we just think of it like a hangout session rather than like an interview. And so people felt like there weren't enough questions, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So we shifted it to either 2 or 4. So it's like like that way it's either a round table, we're going to go around, and get a couple different opinions and discuss, or it's just the 2 of us. Like we just kind of like, that's how it's going to be. And that's actually like improved people's enjoyment.
We get a lot of feedback on, well, not we, but I'm just fucking with my camera trying.
I don't care.
The background I want.
We haven't technically started. This is all pre-show.
I've noticed that, especially when it comes to the way everything sort of is right now, you get a lot of feedback from everybody. And one thing I always I tell students whenever we're teaching, a student will have an issue, they'll have a problem with their ability in something. I'm like, dude, confidence sort of comes. Confidence is one of the cool things where you can just say, I have confidence, and it's there. You don't have to worry about anybody else. So be confident, create your stuff. If somebody feeds back something and you want to change, that's one thing. But what I found is I'm just like, well, I don't want to change at all. Like, well, I mean, on some things I do, but on some things I don't. I'm like, and I made some bad mistakes trying to change stuff where I was like, okay, you know what? This is feedback I'm getting. And, I'm going to adjust here and adjust there. And then later I was like, oh shit, it doesn't work as well for me. And I was adjusting for legit reasons where I was like, okay, this does seem like something somebody wants. And then once I did it, so, little things I've adjusted that have made sense. But overall, what I've found is that you're going to get that feedback. Like somebody's probably going to feedback to you guys, just doing me and you, where they're like, oh, 3rd person would be great. And it's really easy to read that and be like, oh, it would be great. And then you do it and you're like, that's not. So it makes sense that you tried around for a while and then found something that
it ended up driving so much stress, because I
that's what I was just gonna say. What makes it easier on you is what's right.
I only brought this back, I think, in July. Like I took 6 months off of these discussions, and these are one of the things that like actually bring me the most joy in content creation. But I was like, all right, so just emailing, and all right, can this, and I was like, again, I'm not at a size where it's like, okay, let me just get somebody who can be that their job. Like I can't afford
Yeah.
that. Like,
Right.
this is a passion, enjoyment, project and product that it's like, okay, I can put this out. Same thing with like the haters, right? So like I let pretty much for the last year been just like, okay, I've got thoughts and feedback on Final Fantasy 14. I moved Final Fantasy to its own like channel, like I've moved New World, because I found that for me, multi-channeling makes the most sense. I like covering the news, I like talking about that, but people, especially within certain game categories, they might like one game, but they will not like the other game. And YouTube, I was just overworking myself, and I found a way that lets YouTube work for me. So I can just say, hey, I got a couple of minutes. Hey guys, this is what's going on with this. I'm excited about this. I got questions about that. What do you guys think? And then it's like, as simple as that video is, it's like, it's very enjoyable. People like really like that, but they might like that for game A and not game B. And so they're doing that, but then I'm like, I'm not actually talking about issues that I really feel are issues within this game. And the reason is because like, I'd be like, hey, this part of the game's really fun, but I really didn't like this. And then it's like, why don't you go kill yourself? You suck. We're gonna like, we're gonna get you and your kids, and we're gonna, so I'm reporting these people, and I'm doing all this, and I'm like, all right, I'm just not gonna talk about that. And eventually, like, they started commenting on my other videos, the same kind of stuff, and I'm like, oh, these people suck. I'm gonna just piss them off. And so I've actually been like grabbing a whole bunch of information, building out basically a plugin to kind of track and basically put people in their own little, like if you want to be a toxic, crazy fanboy, YouTube doesn't give me the tools that I need to defend myself. And one of the real,
it doesn't even give you the tools to defend yourself against the spammers right now.
Oh yeah,
like,
spammers.
I mean, I upload the video and then I immediately go to comments and just hit refresh because I know somebody's going to be like, "This is ACG. Contact me on Telegram, and I'll give you a game." And I'm like,
"Supers, yeah." I actually go. People are like, why are you hearting these comments that are just so negative? I'm like, so they know it's me replying and not somebody like, because people try to like dupe me and clone me.
Yeah.
Even, I'm like, it doesn't matter what size you are. They're going to try to get anybody to get into this ecosystem. But like one of the things that was eye-opening, I was actually like, it was actually from Asmongold. He was having somebody give him crap, and then he was able to pull up their comment history and say, oh, wait a minute, you're faking here. Like I can see your entire chat history, where like 2 months ago you were saying something completely different.
Oh, on Twitch?
And I was like, gosh, YouTube, how much that would change just for me, like in terms of like, especially the impassioned
I'm going to tell you right now, YouTube doesn't want it.
I know they don't.
I mean,
but I can,
there's a lot of things. You can create it. Yeah, I was talking to Reg. He's one of the guys on that chain on our podcast, and it's funny because he's big into APIs. He knows programming. I mean, that's all he's done all his life is programming of all kinds of languages. And he's like, dude, there's things. He's like, it's not as easy as some other stuff, but you can even do stuff where like you grab text grabs and give them to me, and I can parse them out. If we have to get that, like, if we have to go dark ages on people, we could do that as well. Right. And he's like, and then if you trust somebody, you could give them access to your channel and they could do it. There's ways to use your web browser to do that. There's all kinds of stuff.
That's essentially what I'm trying to create, is like, because I'm, doing the manual work, and I was like, wait a minute, I can program this to capture it. Because ultimately I would like to see a history, and I'd like to be able to apply labels to commenters, because like, I want to know that, like, I believe in a conversation, and I think that's a part of how I approach my stuff. But, and I see people, they talk about, they get so big at some point that it just becomes untenable. And usually you end up just focusing on the hate. And I'm like, I'd like to be able to, like, I don't want to censor them. I don't want to sit here and say, like, you can't talk, but I got to defend myself. And I also want to make sure that I'm getting, putting context. So it's like, if all you ever post to me is just BS, like you can keep posting your BS. You're just gonna exist in perpetual timeout, like with my kids. And then essentially I'll focus in on the people who are like, oh, actually have a question, actually have this. And YouTube doesn't give you those tools. And I was like, screw it, I'm building it. And that's where I'm having my own little fun. Are we ready to get started? We're 6 minutes over.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right. All right.
Is this one live?
Yeah, we're live. We're always live. Okay. For these. I like it. It's a lot less editing. And then I just post the audio. Audio later. All right, here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Epic Loot Radio. We got a special guest, ACG, coming on board to talk about the state of YouTube gaming and so much more. In fact, if you guys caught the pre-show, if you're listening to the MP3 of this live, we're talking about Cyberpunk 2077, so maybe that'll come back up again. Carrick also always seems to recommend some amazing games to me, keeping me always on my toes, especially as to what's to play. So we got a lot to talk about. I want to open with the state of YouTube, and then I want to eventually get to the kind of your game of the year watch, like what you've played this year. What's your top three, bottom three? Looking at 2022. Obviously, we're looking already at a stated delay. Many games kind of shifting already out of the fall, as to be expected. And I'm wondering if we're going to see another like February mind meld of crazy awesome and chaotic goodness. Like we talked about that actually recently on your podcast, where most of the stuff they kind of blew their load in February, and then everything's been kind of chill for a little while. So first things first, man, you apparently making 18 plus content. Like that's all I see YouTube hitting you for.
Somebody said it was the beard. It must have been like the beard, the furry community, the beardy lovey community, because dude, everything's getting like adult rated on my channel
for reviews. Like that's the thing.
Reviews, podcasts, news video one time. By the way, ignore the green screen around my head, people. I'm in a different office right now. But dude, everything. It's ridiculous. And they don't tell you what's weird is they'll give you an email, but these emails will, especially if you use Gmail like me, sometimes they'll get like locked up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right?
Yeah.
So I'll see them, but what'll happen is they'll pop back in, and if it's from the exact same sender, it'll go under. And so I admittedly, in my fault, there were 3 or 4 I missed that they had done, but then there were a lot that I searched all my emails, and there was no indicator that it happened, and they went to 18 plus. And I fought them, and they supposedly checked them in less seconds than it would have taken to watch one of the videos. So I claimed 9 refusals. I was like, 9 of these aren't real for sure. And within less than like 3 minutes, and some of these videos are 2 hours, less than 3 minutes, they had said, no, it's for sure adult content. So I was like, okay, there's nothing I can do. I have a big patron, which is nice. And I do a lot of stuff for the patrons in the Discord. We do D&D games, we do streaming, we do all kinds of stuff. So that's been the only helper, because I have a feeling it won't be too long. Either I'll get demonetized, or especially because I'm so vocal on Twitter, and I've seen other people be vocal against other creators on Twitter. There was stuff going back and forth, that kind of stuff. But admittedly, I will just say on Twitter to YouTube, I'll be like, no, you're lying about this. Like if this for sure happens, like we have the backing information for it. For example, the 18 plus videos, we uploaded them to another channel that was monetized. They never got claimed.
My friend Chaos Prime, like he's been going through a nightmare with YouTube. They like said his account doesn't exist. He's been trying and going through all this back and forth with Team YouTube and tickets, etc. The thing that finally fixed it was legal action. He had a lawyer draw up the document, send it over, and all of a sudden it was fixed. Right. I think there's a creator that was Danny Gonzalez, and he says that one of the things he just likes to say whenever like problems kind of like pop up is, I'm going to explore my legal options. Let me just explore my legal options here, and how all of a sudden that gets a lot of the shenanigans kind of out of the way. But yeah, I've been noticing like from your Twitter, that's where I was like, holy crap, that's got to be stressful. That's got to be stressful.
Yeah, it's stressful because you also don't know, and it might be some of your. I don't have a lot of golden content, some of the long trail content, because I do a lot of reviews. So, admittedly, somebody's probably not looking for Spark Up from 2014. How is this indie game? They're probably not. It's not getting a lot of footage, but some of the podcasts were, and some of these podcasts were really clean because they had developers on, and they were still being, and those would still get views. Like if, like for example, Vermintide 2's, came up. So Vermintide 1 podcast shot up because people didn't know I'd done a podcast with them, and they're good friends of mine. So it's like all these developers were come, and they would all be claimed. They're all claimed. And like, it's ridiculous. And I'll go through it. I use voice recognition technology. We have people, I pay people in our Discord to listen to them. I'll pay them an hourly wage, and I'll be like, I need you to listen to this. I need you to mark every single time anything ass, damn, is said. Those are like your tier 1 cuss words. When it was said, I need to know the exact time frame it was said. And then when you get higher, I need to know those. And then if you find something that's very easily trackable as a suggestive sexual joke from me, I need to know. Now, those never get hit. I'll talk about Peter North and some creepy stuff, like some really dark, some really like innuendo in there. They never get claimed. It's ones that have nothing that do. It's ridiculous. And it's YouTube though. I mean, that's the thing, is like, it's all algorithm now. It's all AI. It's all looking at the past, because I did cuss and I do still cuss, but maybe I cussed more in a small period of time. So you're never gonna know. And like you just said, somebody says legal and maybe it gets fixed. But the problem is that YouTube's AI is technically black box, meaning that
Right.
it doesn't,
You're not
they
going to open
don't
it up
know
and figure it out.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
no CSR who can, and I know that for a fact. And this person who maybe will watch this podcast can say their name if they want, but somebody contacted me who's a very big YouTuber. They were very nice. They contacted me and they're like, hey, I want to walk you through some stuff. And as we did, he was explaining to me that he had proven to his YouTube manager something, that the YouTube manager was putting their foot down saying, this is not possible. What you're saying is not possible. He's like, not only do I know it's possible, we've tracked it. And here is like pages of documentation. And the people at YouTube were like, oh, like there's no, I mean, it was their systems that were doing. So it's like, it wasn't the YouTuber doing it. It was their systems doing it. It was like, oh, I see. So even the YouTube managers that you deal with as a YouTube, if you have one, they don't have any extra, really all they can do is just say, okay, we'll give them another chance or what have you. But even then, from what I've been told, they only have a very limited amount of times they can do that. And I don't know if this is true, but I did hear that Google doesn't necessarily look kindly on giving chances multiple times. So like as a manager of channels, you may not want to give multiple channels multiple chances because it may impact you at the company. Like how often do you let this happen?
Right. And you think about, when you start to think about the reason why, like they want to have a concept of trusting the system and being able to the algorithm is the algorithm, guys. Like that's the way it is. That's why when it comes down to content creation, like for people, no judgment for those who make that their full-time career. Like, my friend Chris, that's what he does. He's a full-time content creator. I'm like, there's no way. Like, I don't trust AI that much. Like, in that regards, like, oh man, I would be so stressed out all of a sudden.
That's why I do have the patron. And
you have to have
I don't push it as much as I probably should, and I don't do a lot of like big videos about Patreon. I think I've done 4 in the entire time I've had the channel. One where I said we're in trouble. There's an issue. Another one where there was the issue where I got demonetized last time. Yeah, because this will be my 4th time. Yeah, so I've made a video for each time it's happened. Now that I think about it, Total Biscuit helped me when he was alive. God bless him. He reached out to me and he helped me with the 2nd time, which was, and even he was like, I have no clue. I've watched all your stuff. What is happening? And his manager, I guess you'd call him, did help me out. But I don't really do that. But you have to have a Discord or a patron, or something to back up. Because
you have to have
YouTube
something.
is most likely, it's not going to get better. No. Right. And they're filtering, I think, down to a part to where they know they can, for example, thumbs down. We know that was, I know that was big companies because I do have friends who work at like the larger movie companies and, or even watchers. And they'll be like, no, the big companies didn't want a movie getting downvoted. They did not want a movie trailer getting downvoted. So they just tell YouTube, hey man, like we're not going to post it on yours. We're going to post it on Twitch as an ad, or we're going to post it here and there. But until YouTube is like, okay, downvotes. And remember when YouTube lied about this? YouTube said, we don't want to make you feel bad, so we're taking them away. But if you sign into your dashboard, the first thing the dashboard tells you is you suck.
Yeah.
If your video is doing bad, it's in bright. It's like
I can pull it up right now. I can pull it up right now. Like here's the like to dislike ratio.
Not doing good, and here is why you need to change. And you're just like, damn. I mean, they were caught red-handed on that one.
Do you ever feel that, like, obviously that it's kind of like the left hand and the right hand don't know what they're doing, or it's kind of mom and dad getting divorced and they're just like fighting and they're saying that nothing's wrong? Because I often feel like the YouTube is like, don't stress out. We want you to take breaks. But we're going to like, now we want you to upload 3 shorts. Now we want you to do like these kind of videos. And it's like, I hear from creators, it's like, they're just getting fatigued. Yeah, and out.
I think that's a complete lie. And that's said, I do not believe in any way, shape or form that YouTube is out there worried about people's mentality. YouTube wants you to upload as much as possible. YouTube can still run ads.
Yeah.
And not pay you. We know that because multiple channels that aren't monetized have ads running. YouTube gets all that. YouTube doesn't want to monetize you. Like, in all honesty, YouTube would love for you to create unlimited content and for them to just work with them and the advertisers, not pay you anything. No, I don't believe it. And not because I think companies are bad. Their job is to get as much as they can for as little as possible. And as a consumer, Whatever you buy, whatever you do, your job is to get as much as you can for the price that you're paying. And so I'm not like against it, but whenever they're like, oh, we want to make sure, blah, 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 that's pretty much what they need to say right now. Because if they didn't say it,
Mhm.
they would be in dire straits. So to say it and even hire people, you'll hear a company go, we're going to hire a PR representative. And you're like, that costs 50 to 150 grand a year. They
Mhm.
make that in a minute. And it sort of removes them from any worry. And they can say, oh, we're looking into it.
Yeah, that's a good man. We're looking into it. We'll let you know if we
Dude,
find anything.
I set up call centers all my life. I can tell you, I had written those FAQs before, where it's like
Mhm.
we're looking into it. Like, sure you are.
So when it comes down to the current state of YouTube, though, like there's a million people willing to obviously then jump in. So
Yeah,
as soon as a creator burns out, it's like there's 1,000 people more than willing to kind of take their place on that
everybody can be
rodeo.
replaced.
Yeah. So how do you then like look at your future with YouTube and especially with video game reviews, like to really kind of bring this into the gaming YouTube space beyond the YouTube space, because YouTube is like just many different things, but within the gaming space, where do you see the current state of the video game review, its value within kind of the, I guess, economy, for lack of a better word, and where do you see that evolving to or devolving to in the next 5 years?
I think a lot of people call their reviews and they're really they're vlogs.
Yeah.
And so, um, I think I've even talked to YouTubers who are like, I don't want to do a score as much anymore because somebody will hold me to that score. They're going to hold
Mhm.
me to an 8.5. So I'm
Well,
just
and
going to say,
they'll
oh,
compare
but
it to other 8.5s or 9s.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
And
hey, you
admittedly,
gave
that's
this.
how humans work.
Yeah.
But at the same time, so there's a desire. I like putting my foot down. I don't know any other. I've always have since I was a little kid. It's like, no, this is for sure worth my money. And I
Mhm.
buy the games. So I know if it's worth, even like with Last of Us, I bought a code, it's like, or the amount of money and I'll give it away to somebody because I know that there's a psychological component to spending money on a game review. So that will probably always be there. I think vlogs are becoming more popular. Podcasts for a while were it. Podcasts have died out. So for a
Mhm.
long time, podcasts, you would see every channel creating a podcast and they would talk about games. And what happened was they're too long form.
Yeah.
And so people sort of went back to reviews. You still have podcasts, but if you've noticed back in the One Up days, One Up Yours, one of my favorite podcasts of
Oh
all
yeah.
time. G4, I watched stuff with Adam Sessler and all these people. I saw them sort of alter. You saw podcasts and you were like, oh my God, every big group's got a podcast. And then after a while, you're just like, okay, I don't have 40 hours in a day, I have 4. And if 2 podcasts are 2 hours, then I can't subscribe to all these others.
Mhm.
So you'll have an audience for every single person, and just because a YouTuber can be replaced doesn't mean a new consumer isn't also coming into YouTube to watch.
Mhm.
So I'm not too worried about that. I'll do my Patreon, if they were to demonetize me, I would simply push more. Like, I think Jim Sterling doesn't get, I think, he was huge already, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't have any ads on his videos, and he's just like, you know it's all Patreon. And some patrons would support me and some wouldn't. I wouldn't die. I would probably still do it. I would probably still do it for free because I like putting my foot down. And I
Yeah.
do think it's actually worthwhile. I don't know about you, but $60 to me, and if they raise them to 80 or 100, it's always about what it's worth. But to me, knowing that somebody played it and it's like, here's some stuff you may like, here's some stuff you may not like, is probably going to be valid forever. There's really no time where I see that not being valid. Platform may change, you know.
Do you think live streaming is having more of an impact on kind of the style of review?
No, but I do think that it's fucked up the algorithm, excuse my language. So
I don't
I,
care.
I don't think a lot of people realized what happened. You heard a lot of people say the Twitch streamers that come to YouTube don't affect YouTube. That's dramatically incorrect. What happens is they extend the watch time. So your video, your review is compared against a stream's watch time
Mhm.
now. And those long streams, it would take many weeks for somebody to make a documentary about the World War II for a 2-hour video, let's say. But
Yeah.
it takes big time people 30 seconds to turn on stream, and they're paid by YouTube to come and stream. So they're reinforced in 3, 4, or 5 different ways.
Oh,
Where I'm
dude, they
reinforced
are
in
set.
0. Yeah,
Right.
because I don't do sponsors at all. So there's no,
Yeah.
I don't get any sponsor money. I buy every game. These guys are paid, plus they get all the free stuff. Plus, and by the way, I'm not saying one's better psychology wise. I like buying the games. So though that changed the algorithm, also February changed the algorithm. So what people don't understand about how February worked, and the reason why I continually was like pushing, nobody's going to listen to me, but I was on Twitter saying, I wish somebody would delay a game. The reason why is that what I knew was going to happen, and it did happen. February became really popular, meaning all your videos that are doing good are considered viral on your channel.
Mm-hmm.
So what that meant was if you did spectacularly well in February and then March, I uploaded a podcast which did spectacularly poorly, then they would think that the channel was viral videos for February. And so what happens is very quickly the drop off for views, because it wasn't a review, there's nothing big to review. So I was getting these massive million hit reviews and then nothing besides like 200 people watching a stream and then another 26,000 watching the video. And so February, if they had had one of those games move March, April, maybe, maybe in the June timeframe,
Yeah.
you would also have had advertisers come in. So the advertisers pulled back after February. So did the games. So did our videos. And I'm going to tell you, you could post anything on Elden Ring and do okay.
Mm-hmm.
When in February, that's just the way it was. And a lot of people I know, they were getting dramatically lower views, even lower than normal. And that's because YouTube's algorithm was looking and saying those must have been, that February for all these people was viral. Because one of the problems is it really doesn't know if you're gaming. It knows that you're gaming content, but it doesn't necessarily know how you're going up against everybody else. Why do we know this? Because the recommended is never right. If you look at your YouTube recommendations, I bet you it's not right. Like mine right now has chess, and I can't tell you the last time I watched. It's all chess, by the way. No video game content.
My algorithm, because it's always kind of interesting. We talk about the algorithm, but it's also very personal in that regards to a degree. Like I hadn't seen gaming content. I hadn't seen one of your videos recommended. I hadn't seen anything recommended.
That's another thing. My stuff does not get recommended anymore.
No, meaning like I would look in and it was all about the economy, the fall of China, things that like to its credit, I watched. I was like interesting. That or it was comic book stuff, and I was just like, all right, I would have to go and search. So I had to make a list of people that I knew that uploaded regularly that I was like interested in it. I had to go search their name or go check my subscriber tab. I actually ended up in after February having to go to the subscriber tab more often than not, just so I was like, hey, have they uploaded anything yet today or this week? I want to check out. And the other way that I was actually getting gaming videos were people were recommending them. And this is actually kind of the next question that I have for you. We kind of talked about this briefly when I was on your podcast. Reaction content seemed to be like, and I don't know if it still is, but just this insane meta to where when I analyzed the data, I was able to have a couple of my videos reacted to by Asmon. I had done some reaction content, and making reaction content was like 1,000 times better for me as a content creator than actually having one of the world's biggest reactors react to my content. It actually just sucked the life out of that video. You talk about, a viral video.
They were watching that video and not yours, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then people were like, oh, I saw that they reacted to Asmon reacted to it. I'm going to go watch the reaction video. Now, I was talking with Josh Strife Hayes about this, another content creator, and he came up with a plan. I think actually seems to work well for him. You just react back. You react to the reaction, and you just let that thing just run out into the point where in and of itself, reaction content's a meme. But for everybody who says they're frustrated about it, it's like those are words. The numbers show that it's like dominating. Have you felt reaction content? Have you been reacted to? What did you think about that random meta that seemed to pop up this summer?
I mean, I did, and we did talk about it. I do see it pop up. I watch Josh's stuff on some MMOs that like I've liked or whatever, but Josh also has very clickbaity, this is the worst, blah, blah, blah. Not saying that's bad. I'm saying he has other things that also work where, to be honest, I have some pretty dry thumbnails. Occasionally I'll think I'm going to put a chick on this thumbnail and I'll be like, nah, I have these weird restrictions that I know do restrict me. As in, I take full responsibility that some things I won't want to do, but I watch a lot of stuff and I've seen back and forth reactions and they do work. I think reactions work, but I think what happens is we're starting to see such an influx of creators creating videos that if you do that, the algorithm is starting to really identify everything in these weird segments. And so if I did that, then the reviews will get less. And if I do news, the reviews will get less. If I do just
Yeah.
reviews, they're fine because I'm known for reviews. There's this very odd, and you could do another channel,
Yeah.
but like you said, it does take a lot of work. And then for somebody like me, it's like, well, I don't want to say, hey, everybody who's here, go to this other channel to check this one very distinct thing that's different about me versus just saying, you know what, I'm going to screw up the channel. I was screwing up the channel last year
Mhm.
and being fine with it because the algorithm that happened in March of this year was the big problem. Last year, I noticed some weird trends, but I wasn't too worried about them. But because I track everything, like
Yeah.
on a spreadsheet that's, I mean, it's got to be 6,000 pages now. I track every single thing that occurs, and I don't really look at it too much. I just, when I notice something, I'll go because I don't
Just
want
make
to
a
look at
note.
it too much.
Right.
Yeah, and dude, it's just, it's become such a thing that if I did reactions, I'd be worried that people would expect that. And then have I been reacted to? Yeah, you'll have somebody be like, "Oh, I don't like his review." But what's funny about that is most of what I do, I cover. I'll say, "Here's a bug." If somebody wants to say you didn't have that bug, then I'd just be like, "Fuck you, man." Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's just asinine. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous. That's what bugs are. If they weren't bugs randomly, they would be features. That's
Right.
not how it works.
Yeah.
So to me, I don't get too many because I don't think there's really a big reason to react to reviews. I've said stuff in podcasts, but people react in the comments. And then I admit, you know, if somebody's a jerk in the comments or they didn't listen, I'll be like, listen, dude, at least have the damned respect to understand what we were saying. But then somebody will bring something really smart up. For example, we were doing podcasts for a long time. And to be honest, it was 4 dudes. I'm the only creator. And I did that on purpose. I don't want a channel where we're all creators. It makes no sense. It's
Right.
just like it's not even real popularity. I don't like it. I don't watch those even.
You
I
don't
want to see
necessarily
normal
get
people.
a realistic look too, because like
Right.
here, like you get 2
There's
creators
a
into a room,
different
and
feel to it.
algorithms and all this stuff comes
Yeah.
up. Like all of a sudden,
Yeah.
it's like it becomes there's also, and some people find inside baseball interesting. Some people don't. They just want to have a perspective from a wide range of people, and that's one of the things I talk about in terms of, or at least I think a lot on, is that one of the things I feel gives me a unique both advantage and disadvantage. Is that the advantage is that I've got kids. I don't do this full time. I like making videos. I go to work and I spend time with my family. And then when I play games, I enjoy them and I talk about that. And the disadvantage is that I'll never be first, especially in these games. I will not be the first to finish
Yeah,
the raid.
it would be hard to be at.
It
Yeah.
will be it'd be cruel, like, you know, to the things that I also value in life. And so there's that. The advantage is that I have a voice that I feel is fairly unique in the space, because when I sit down to talk with people who, oh, you play 40 hours of video games a week and you've cleared all the hardest content and you did it first, et cetera, et cetera. Cool. You know, I'll get there. Yeah.
But I'm only able to do 2 hours a day. Yeah,
Right. And
dude.
yeah,
I mean, I teach martial arts on the side, do boxing. I
nice.
teach a school here nearby. There's a lot of stuff outside. I barely sleep. I mean, I've always been that way. And what I don't want to do is create all day. And that
Right.
can happen, and it has happened. I've had to have
Yeah.
other, I think even it wasn't Angry Joe, it might have been other Joe. Somebody one time I was talking on Twitter, I think DMs, and they're like, dude, you're always posting videos. And I don't think they weren't being rude. They were
Right.
like, what the hell? And then I talked to Totobus about it. He's like, dude, seriously? And I was like, well, I barely sleep. And he was like, yeah, but maybe a little bit of that, you know, should go somewhere else. And I was already doing other stuff. I burned the candle at both ends and in the center. But
We're very much alike, you and me.
yeah, but at the same time, I have never fallen off of my like of games and my
Yeah.
desire to learn. So like right now I'm taking 2 master classes from the masterclass website. I love that website. I'm always taking at least 1 class from there. I'm
Mhm.
always learning, always watching GDC. I think I pretty much have a limitless love for games. Hopefully. It
Yeah.
hasn't run out yet. Even on a bad game, like recently, where you're like, dude, this game is pretty trash, like Saints Row. At least
I've
for
heard
me and my
so many
experience,
people just dogging on that one.
dude, and I never fell out. I mean, I never fell out of love. I didn't even fall out of love for that game. I was like, yeah, the game's not worth it. But I'll tell you what, there were some fun moments. Game really has to be bad for me to give a never touch, because that means 0 money.
Yeah.
That means that's a low score, man. And I don't want to be like a lot of channels where 5 is the average. Like that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. 5 is pretty bad. like on a 1 to 10 scale.
Right.
So I'm always watching that. But what I was going to say real quick about the mistake that we made a mistake on the podcast with these 4 guys, me as the creator and them not. We started just sitting back and talking. And one of the guys who was watching, a very good long-term patron, was like, listen, you guys could have searched on a web browser in 2 seconds and had the proper data. But instead, we were doing the back and forth. And I was like, oh, shit, that's correct. Like, we could have been right, but we weren't. We wasted 20, 30 minutes of being wrong. Because, and that was one of those times when the feedback, we talked about this prior to the podcast starting, when the feedback was correct. And when it was a realistic switch you should make. And I was like, oh man, you're right. Now we pulled the podcast off YouTube because it was devastating the channel. But at the same time, Anchor and iTunes and Spotify have been glorious. They make barely any money. I pay the podcasters to come on, so I'm losing money already. But they don't impact the views, and there's not a lot of negative feedback. People don't have enough time to find different ways to tell you suck.
Well, it's a whole different piece.
It's a whole different. It's awesome. It's actually very cool.
I've always seen podcasting as a loss leader in terms of like when you think of it from a business perspective. There's the cost there. Like I did work with an editor because I ended up getting like a Facebook deal that allowed me to do a lot more for a little bit. But I was like, all right. And then they were like, and we're done. Like Facebook's doing whatever it's doing. So they dipped out. I was never expecting it to be long term. So I was like, okay. So I was able to do some stuff with an editor, helping with clips, looking at analyzing it. And it was like with the editor and the cost and all of it, it's like, oh my gosh, it's too expensive to justify. In fact, people are like, hey, we'd like it if you still keep clipping down the podcast. And it's like, I would like to get to there, but like you have a Patreon, like, it's like when I look at just the mathematics and the amount of time behind it, I might make a couple shorts out of these videos. Like that's at best that I can do with the time. But like it cost me, like, I think right now, roughly with hosting and all that, around $500 a year is what podcasting costs, not counting the time, and I've even like no one's ever accepted it, but I've often, like my theory is just ask to try. And so I'll ask just giant ass creators and people and be like, it's like they got a public email, and it's like, to the point where I'm like, all right, there's the time there, and trying to, always try to line up interesting shows. But what were you gonna say?
I can't remember. I mean, the thing is I was just going to say, this is the 3rd month in the last 12 months I've lost money, as in been negative in my bank account or in my YouTube account, because I do buy the games, I buy hardware, I review, I make stuff for patrons, I give them shirts, because I'm actually a believer that even if the channel stops, there might be somebody out there with an ACG shirt on, and I find that pretty awesome in a way. And there was an Xbox video last year where they were in Mexico, and there were a bunch of people with ACG shirts. And I don't know if it was on purpose. I have no clue how it happened, but it was the greatest. I was just like, that is amazing. And Phil Spencer's talking, and behind him are like 3 people pointing. And I was just like, oh my God, that is so sweet. So I'll spend a lot, but this is the first time since I started where I lost money in a month.
Yeah.
And it was crazy to look at it and go, oh, so I'm going to have to change some things.
Yeah. Like, since March, like, just like you, different scale, right? Like, so it's like when I look at, and the amazing 60,000 people you were here, the first time you were on, I remember I maybe had 1,000 people. So it's been a little while. We've had some success, but it's like when looking just at those numbers, it's like, like after like March and stuff like that, it was just like, I felt like it was like 80%, like everything was down. Everything was down. I think that March algorithm that you were talking about, I've seen a shift obviously into shorts, which that is like, are you playing the shorts game? Have you got any feedback
I've been
on that?
doing, I've been taking the hit on reviews on purpose. So the last 5 reviews I did a short at the exact same moment. And just to see what happened. Here's the weird thing about shorts, dude. I make no money, but I do get some subscribers. So I was looking at it going, that's interesting. Cause like, let's say a news video might take 6 hours to edit. I have a Discord. Well, he's a friend of mine, Absy. He's on the podcast too. He's my editor. So I might pay him to edit it, upload the footage, all that kind of stuff. Or I do a short, which is 1 minute of me joking around and saying the review score. And I'll end up getting more subs from that than a news video. And I've been like, interesting. But I don't like shorts as much. They're ugly.
Mhm.
They look nasty on your channel. If you go to the channel and look at your profile page and you see
I
the
hate,
shorts
I
there,
want them like hidden.
I
Just
want them
put like,
gone. I want them or thumbnails. You know, something needs to
yeah.
happen. But
Right now, like I'm just like pulling it up and not showing it off to the people watching the video form. The yeah, it's like shorts and stuff. Like it's under videos. Like just move it into its own tab because it's like that's actually how it is on mobile. So I have hope. And then when I go into analytics and under content, like you're right. Like when you start looking at shorts, it's like it's the in just terms of it, like the majority of my views over the last month have been in shorts,
yeah, it's a very
but
odd situation because I don't know if that pays off
it
on the
doesn't.
longs.
At least it doesn't feel
Yeah.
like it does.
And I even say, go check the long form. So here's a short form review. It's like, sup, everybody. I won't even do the opening. I'll just be
Yeah.
like, this is ACG. Here we go. Check out the long form in the description. I don't know how those turn over. They're
Yeah.
fun to do. I have no issue with that. And my personal belief is try a little bit of everything
Yeah.
because if they're fun to do, then that makes me want to do something versus
That's
not
the whole
want to turn
that's
the
the whole point.
PC on.
Because
Yeah.
I was listening to a couple of creators. I know one that causes a lot of drama was the quartering, a lot of like anytime because I reacted to one of his videos because he's just complaining about shorts, and I was like, react or die. Like, I mean, adapt or die. Like that's
Yeah.
there.
That
Like
is what it is.
nobody own. We do not own this platform.
Yeah.
Like you can
Right.
be frustrated with it, but if this is the game and this is the rules, you know, you kind of have. And I was like, whenever I talk about people getting into content creation, it's like you got to be ready to be flexible. If you're rigid, the things are going to change on you, and you're going to feel like completely left out. But I think that's why, like, you know, people hitting the like button and people like hitting the join button is so huge. Like I haven't gone in the Patreon route, namely because it's like I think if I was going to go to the Patreon route, that's where I would do my stand-up comedy. Like I'm trying to think. People keep asking me if I'm going to post my stand-up on YouTube, and I go, no, like it's dark, it's dangerous stuff. Like I get a lot of really good laughs. I'm actually having a huge success with it, being invited into new clubs and to do new shows. But it's not like if you go to a comedy club, you expect comedy, and that's where the funny is. And I don't think it would translate well
YouTube does
online.
not want the funny. Netflix is probably okay, but YouTube not so much. So yeah,
Right,
Patreon is
yeah.
probably a good idea. They've only banned a couple people. They have banned some people that I lost over $2,200 on my Patreon in
Ooh.
one day when they banned a gamer. I can't remember who it was, but they banned a patron banned somebody. And then Patreon also switched the fee to the person paying versus
Yeah,
and they didn't tell anybody. And
yeah.
I lost about
Ooh.
another 1,000. So because I was doing quite well from a financial standpoint, take 50% out for taxes kind of stuff. I was like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I can do this if YouTube goes away. And now it would be almost impossible. But those things affected me for no reason. But Patreon still remains the best part because you can upload that stuff and somebody can take a patron video if they want, of course, and
Yeah.
record their screen. But I think Patreon is a good place. OnlyFans is another place. And I have been contacted a couple times by influence managers who are like, we have people on, you know, and I've thought about it before because then I could say stuff, but I say what I want to say anyway. So, like, I mean, it's pretty dark. Some of the stuff we joke about, I'm pretty smart on what not to say,
Yeah.
but we joke about some dark stuff anyway. And now the podcast is on Spotify, which has no issues with that.
Yeah.
So if I
And that's
do
actually
say
good.
something that's dark or
Mm.
something that like maybe the world wouldn't want to hear right now, because I think people get polarized and they think we all think one thing, and I'm very much a believer that like some of my best friends were bad people at one time and they're not anymore. So I'm not going to cancel them out of my life or whatever. If I find out they did
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
I'm like, that person was a jackass. YouTube isn't for that. I don't think
Well,
YouTube or Twitter are for that. They're pretty pro not being that.
yeah. Well, cancel culture in and of itself is a mess in and of itself. They try to rebrand to accountability culture. But its core, like when you analyze it, it's not actually good for the people doing the canceling or the person getting canceled. In fact, like I even joke about, you know, like, hey, all right, if you know, cancel culture would be like, if y'all want to cancel me, that would be the best advertisement for my
Yeah,
content
right.
than you can
Yeah.
imagine, right? Because it's that, like, I'm not going
Anti-cancel culture would help you out.
right because
Right?
like ultimately, like the fear, like the concern is that, and we see a part of this, especially like in Twitter and online, there is this sense that like you have to conform to the group thinking process, and if you don't, you're on the outside of it. But thankfully I think there's enough people who are resistant to that, to that actually mounts it up. And at some point the irony would be like, it's like you're gonna, at some point we're all canceled, and therefore, like the person who like you're back on the outside again. We're all over here having a good old time. And essentially, like, it's interesting because these are things and within internet culture that are studied and understood. And now the advice that goes along with it is that if you're getting canceled, the key thing is to not apologize, which I think is a very anti-human approach. Because if you came to me and you're like, Brian, that joke you made, it really didn't sit well with me. We'd sit down and say, like, I'm sorry, like, I'm not actively trying to offend you. That's never the goal. The goal is to try to get a laugh. And sometimes that means you go into offensive or potentially offensive material. And in that regards, like, that's the human response. But to apologize on the internet means they could say, so-and-so accuses Brian of this. He says he's sorry. The internet and the world just reads that and says, oh, that guy's like evil. He's this monster. And being that you're busy, I'm busy, the world's busy. Cancel culture mostly is people quietly canceling. I think there's very little active people who are just like, we got to get this guy, for internet points. And then ultimately it shifts into like, oh, I don't know what that's about. I'm just gonna dip out, and ends up being kind of the thing. It's this
I'm
Wild
definitely
West.
on the outside in that way because, like, I don't worry about what I say on Twitter. I don't, I'll drop F-bombs. If somebody's a jackass, I'll be a jackass. And I've heard people be like, well, don't be a jackass. You attract more, bees with honey. And I'm like, I'm not trying to attract bees, like, at all. That's not what it is.
Yeah.
I create videos, and on Twitter, if somebody's a jackass, I'll be a jackass back if I have the time. And
yeah, if I have the time.
I have no real issue with that. And I'm not going to lose. I sort of do find it funny to honeypot sometimes, try to piss off two groups so that they're both mad at you. I admit I have done that, but but overall, I don't take it too serious. And when it comes to, like, being on the outside, being on the inside, I've always felt that most people even realize where they are. That's the type of person who sees everybody running and says, I need to get in front of them so I can lead them. And you're just like, dude, that's the wrong logic. What do you just do your own thing? And I'm not really trying to lead anybody. It's just like, here's what I like. Here's the games I like. That's not some huge cultural goal. I mean, people take it really serious. I remember one time I said it might've been on YouTube, it might've been on Twitter. I was like, listen, you guys are arguing over a fucking video game, man. There's wars. Like, you guys are arguing over, no, I said video game review. And there were other people who were on their Twitter going like, I can't believe so-and-so said that. And there were people backing them up because they were following them. And I got DM'd all this. And I was like, listen, dude, that's that proves my point. Like, if they're that verklempt over something I said, whatever, like, that has nothing to do with me. Like, they're that tight over a video game review. Like, what's going on in their life? If you turn off your monitor and you turn off your DMs and you walk outside, and, we joke about touching grass. It's not even just about that. It's about realizing that the little box in front of you, the window is filtered to be about you. And so some creators who do get depressed, who do get slammed on, which I agree they do, and I see it, their focus, they just aren't realizing that monitor, it's directed right at them. Every single thing that they do is on purpose. So good or bad, they get that data, and it always seems about them. And that includes people who want to cancel other people.
Yeah.
They think everything's about them. For example, if I said a joke at a stand-up club and somebody came to me and said I was offended, I'd just be like, I don't care. What? Because I never tried. Like, I get that you say you'd sit down, but you would say the same thing I would say. You would just say it nicer. You might waste the time, but I'm like, it's a comedy club. And I'm not saying you would say horrible stuff. Right. I'm just saying if it was like something dark or something stupid, which a lot of people pretend they don't say. I know a lot of people who pretend to be like on the up and up, and then behind the scenes on DMs, they're just like, dude, I got to play the game.
I think ultimately that, though, is there's a ticking time bomb on that, because it's like the veneer breaks at some point, because you're just like, all right, because I get mad and people.
That's why I'm the way I am too, though, Brian.
It's easier.
Because it's easier. Yeah. So it's just like, even in Discord, like, if somebody's doing something I don't like, I'll be all, hey, I know you guys pay, like, to be here, but knock that shit. I'll just kick you out. Like, I could live without your patron if you're going to be that way to other people. And we're all snooty. We all get snooty, and I'll get snooty. Somebody gets snooty to me. I remember one time, one of the guys on the podcast, we were playing games in the Discord stream, and he was just on me. He's just on me, and just like real life, like playing basketball with somebody, I was just like, dude, what the, like, it just became this. And then about 2 minutes later, we're like, so anyway, I do think it's a little easier if you're a little bit more normal. It's just, it can be uncomfortable if you're not accepting that people may not like you, because I think the veneer helps. If you pretend to be something, it helps, because if somebody shoots at you, you can be like, it hits the shield of fakeness. Admittedly, I don't have too much of if any of a shield, but I just don't care. Like, it's just not that big of it. I care that I'm honest in a review. And I care that when I joke, I'm never joking about a person. I used to. I took a couple developers to task, years ago. And after a while, I was like, you know what? Singling out that person when I don't know what's going on. Like, I went after Randy Pitchford a couple times. And then afterwards, I was like, you know what? I don't know. Not that I'm saying what I said was even wrong, but I was like, is that he the only one making all these decisions? No, because multiple people told them, multiple people know about the decisions. There were other people who were yes men. So there are some things that I've like, this just doesn't pay off in the end. It just makes me sort of sound like an asshole if I do a video all about one person versus, let's say, a company, which I would still do.
Yeah, and a company obviously is, like, that's where it's interesting. I see a lot of people actually try to put like a personhood onto like a company, like, oh, that company cares. Like, no. People within the company can care, but a company does not have that capacity.
It's exactly right.
And people are like, oh no, the mission statement. I was like, the mission statement means nothing if they're not making money. And if they're, it's like, it's all about
got to pay somebody to write the mission statement. If you ain't making money, you don't even have the money to pay somebody to write it.
Yeah, 100%. Now, as we get into kind of the final part of the podcast here, let's talk about kind of our game of the year watch. Like, obviously there has been a massive rush in February. I felt like the summer was pretty lean, but a couple of really surprising games have come along my way that I am absolutely thrilled with so far. So I'd love to know what would be your kind of like your top three and your bottom three games of the year this year. Like any real ones that you're just like, and it doesn't have to be like a never touch. Just like,
I get you. Yeah. Cult of the Lamb is probably one of my highest.
Okay.
It was weird, but it was good. Elden Ring is good. I love Forbidden West, right?
Yeah.
For bad ones, Saints Row is, man. Saints Row might have been the worst game I played that I remember. I always play crap games, but sometimes you don't create content for them, or you bought them on the side, and so I would say Saints Row is pretty high in the bad section. Like, Saints Row is really rough. I mean, that was that was a surprise, even though I saw it coming. It's like sometimes, whenever you see a friend make a mistake and you're like watching them, they'll pick up on it. They'll pick up on it. And then they still make the mistake. They try the 3-point shot against the defender that there's absolutely no chance they're going to make it. And you're like, dude,
okay,
why'd you do that? That's Saints Row. Saints Row, just wow. It was trying to field goal in basketball. Like, that was on a completely different court. So that would be my bad one. But yeah, Cult of the Lamb is awesome.
What do you like about him?
Just because it is quirky, different, and it kept me interested with unlocks all the time. Like, every single moment of that game, there's something new sort of being thrown at you, and it's sort of quirky looking. It's got some, I'm not religious, by the way, at all. But it does have some religious iconography that I felt was a little bit like the emo kid who goes to his first satanic, hard rock concert, like upside down crosses for really no reason, where I was you can put them in there, but even I know that I was like, that was an odd thing to put in your game for really no reason, but it was cult, so they were trying to push that. I liked the game. I thought it was great. Elden Ring is fantastic, but Elden Ring's launch will be brought up in my discussion for Game of the Year, because Elden Ring's launch was particularly rough, where I would say Forbidden West's was less so. Not that I'm saying Forbidden West is a better game. It's just when I don't do a lot of Game of the Year, but I do like Memory of the Year, what have you. Yeah. And I could certainly see that Elden Ring will be in there for sure. I did like Dying Light too, a lot. It was buggy, but it's been a weird year.
That was a long development on Dying Light too. Like, that was the same thing. There's a couple of games that it's like, oh yeah, there was somebody who's reminding me there's apparently another pirate game about to come out, or
Skull and Bones.
But yeah, and when I found out that it was like, oh, it's almost about to release, I was like, that's not out yet. Like, I thought that was announced the same time that the other pirate game that's already
they get delayed all the time. And they get delayed forever, and then they all release in the same month, which was just a disaster. I think Forbidden West will get shafted, not because I think it'll win Game of the Year, but I mean, it released at the same time frame as Elden Ring, which is quite difficult. Where Cult of the Lamb took long enough that I could easily see somebody Maybe enjoying Call of the Lamb more because Elden Ring was tough, even though Elden Ring to me was far easier to figure out and do than their past games. I could see somebody looking at it. And so I just saw somebody post Stray.
Mhm.
I haven't got a chance to even play Stray yet. I don't know if I would give it Game of the Year just by what it's doing,
Mhm.
but I definitely want to play it because, like, for example, for me, this generation, one of the best games ever is Concrete Genie,
Yeah.
which was the PSVR, PS5 game. And
Okay.
so I do like those artistic games. Something about those grab me. Like
There's something beautiful in a smaller team without so many like things pulling on them, right? So when you look at Halo, when you look at like an established IP, Call of Duty, like the expectation continues to grow and grow and grow, and it's like at some point you're like, even Yoshi P talking about Final Fantasy 16, it's like they had to make a call, like we're not going to try to make this game for everybody and put everything into it. It's going to take us 10 to 15 years to do that. We want to release the game. We want to actually like say, here's what the game is, enjoy it. And like there's this idea that maybe that's not going to live up to your expectations. And so, hey, you know what? There's another game right around the corner. And I think it's more important about that. The indie company, the indie game, like it's like, yeah, we're just making something. We're just trying to find the fun. And we're really like, and then the reasons why I think they're so much more memorable is because when they do hit, they hit. And if they don't, you kind of never heard of them in the first place.
Yeah, right. So it's a filter in its way that
Yeah.
once they hit, that they're probably really good. I will say one thing that does bother me is that I see a lot of people starting to apply tags as worth. So they'll say, oh, this is a AA game, so it's immediately going to be worth more than a AAA game because of originality, or this indie game is going to be worth more. There's two ways I can prove that patently wrong. Look at The Ascent. The Ascent was spread for almost 2 years that only 11 people were working on it. The developer had to step forward and say, I don't know how this continues to be said, but it is not just 11 people.
Yeah.
It's 11 people in the office. We have tons of outside contractors. And one of the things I always tell people is, at least for me as a reviewer, I don't care about one person, 1,000 people. I do see the results many times that lead to that. But at the same time, what I care about is $50, $50, $50. If you're charging me 50, this one's charging me 50. What do I get for $50? I don't care so much about who worked on it, which can also burn you because some people will want you to cancel a game because a certain person's working on it, which we saw with you were talking about Dying Light 2. One of the reasons for its extra long development was Chris Avalon wrote most of the story, and they had to remove it all because of his troubles, and that required them to replace the writing. And so you have a delay that really probably some of it was technical, but some of it was probably the actual, narrative.
I wonder if we end up seeing something along the lines. I know this is not with gaming, but with the Flash movie that's apparently supposed to come out next year and all the troubles that's going on.
Ezra or whatever his name is.
Ezra Miller. Yeah. It's like, and then he's miraculously came in to play with apologizing for like mental health issues. And like, if that's the case, I hope he gets the help that he needs. But a part of that really felt like, the studio was like, you go get him, hunt him down. I don't care what you need. He needs to apologize and disappear for a while because they're killing our, like, it's $200 million movie. And they're like, all right, we've already filmed it. This is all in special effects now. Shut up, dude, please.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing with having a lead, right? It just takes one person to sing. And the same thing happens with games. You'll hear about a developer who said something on a forum and all of a sudden everybody's like, ban this game. And what bothers me is you got 20 people who are working on the game, 30 people, 40 people, 400 people. It's like, are we saying that those 30 other people should be destroyed because of this?
Right.
So you have all of these real issues now impacting stuff that's really nebulous. Really, it's not the same thing as a book, and a movie is certainly much more like a video game where you have all these people working. It's like, okay, so what we're saying then is put everybody out of work. I just want, I would like to get some of these people and say, okay, so you don't like this writer who said something, who is a writer on the game or the movie, and you want to cancel it. Let's bring all the other people that were employed to your house, and you have to tell all of them you're out of work because I don't like that this person said something. And I think that's more on the company to probably vet people a little bit better. I think with Ezra, it sounds like it is mental health. I mean, he was doing stuff that was so far beyond. Like sometimes people do stuff and they'll be like mental health, and you're like, I don't think so.
You're right. Like, let's not label that as a cop out. Like, it's like I struggle with anger issues. Like I've been open about that. I'll talk to people about that. I get help for that, in that regards. We've been developed.
Like, what do you do? Do you like cuss?
I get to a point where I will scream. Like it just like I blow up, and it's like, and it's not, I'm not excusing what I'm about to say. Like, note that I'm
No, I
not
know.
trying to
I
justify what
asked
I'm
you
saying,
to.
but
I asked
like
you to.
I'll literally get like where it's like, it's kind of like, thankfully I never get violent. You know, I'm not a violent person, but I'll just like scream at the top of my lungs, and it's like, and I make no rational sense. And that's like how I know it's like, when it's like,
I like
what,
that idea.
like I make no rational sense. Like you know, just like I word vomit, you know, just like, but I get to a point where now, thankfully through therapy, thankfully through maturity of being an older man, like when I was like, you know, I always say like I was an asshole 25 and under. Like it's like I was all about the Brian show and etc. But you know, having you know, like matured, it's like, and through thankfully therapy, through cognitive, like what's the root cause of what's causing, why am I angry? Like I was able to, like, I can identify like when it's like I'm getting frustrated, I'm getting angry, I can excuse myself from the situation. So the only time I ever blown up in the last like 10 years, like just like where I'm like, I was like, hey, back up. You know, hey, I'm going to go into this other room and I'm just going to cool down, because like, I know that I'm a part of the problem and the disagreement here, right? It's not just, you know, you, but it's like, but then like, and it's like when somebody was just like, and it's eventually like, if I can't, I was like, and it's like, like nobody likes you. You're a horrible human being. It's like, that's not true, but it's just like eventually you get to that point. So yeah, it's just like ginger turned red. That's exactly right. And you know, so it's like I know I struggle with that.
I don't see you as that. So that's as
a lot of people don't, but it's like
I
like it's something that it's like, you know, like I'm a very joyful person, but it's like there's an anger sense. There's a sense. I when I was going through therapy on it, it's always rooted in injustice. Like it's always rooted into when I see things that like should not be that way, and it's like I feel like that's just wrong, and that I stew on it, and I obsess about it, and I let it kind of affect me, and so that's where it's like I get all the social media stuff off my phones, and so I'm never being inundated by that. I let my wife kind of filter the news, because it's like, especially over the last 2 years, it's like, oh my god, you know, it's like, you know, should we send the kids to school, this and that, like it's, there's so many things, and it's like,
yeah,
you know, you just get like, I'm like, sometimes it's just like,
dude, I mean, for me, I probably, you know, I mean, I want to get canned. When I was younger, you know, I fought a lot or whatever and did some stupid stuff, but mine burned out, especially once I started getting a schedule, like 2 decades ago or whatever. But I get up every single day, even weekends at 3 a.m. I work out for 3 hours.
Nice.
And I think by that time, I'm like, so not physically, well, yeah, physically drained too, but it's a little bit more difficult to get the adrenal high of anger for me.
Yeah,
because I'm at the point. What I noticed on Friday,
exercise is a key defense into me managing my mental health and anger.
Yeah, and just burning it out to the point to where there's a little less raw instant energy, and I'll be like, okay, you know what? I don't really get that way. I would say I definitely have a thing with like truthful, and when like truthfulness is a big deal to me, but I mean, I get that people won't always tell you the truth, you know, because of reasons, and that makes sense. But I don't really have anything, luckily, that really triggers me when I look and see it, and I'm like, what the, you know, there's a couple things I get with, like severe disrespect for the dead bothers me. When Total Biscuit passed away, there were some developers who still have their jobs, which frustrates me to this day. They were celebrating it. And I was like, you know, as somebody who's had cancer, I was like, you are literally the worst person in the world. Like, and I went off, and I know for a fact 2 or 3 companies, they will just never contact me. And those are the companies that I went after. I mean, I was like on Twitter just being like, this person who is right here said this about like, how dare they? Like, how dare they?
Especially because the dead can't really defend themselves.
And it was video games.
Yeah,
sorry,
and video games.
I'm still like, I'm still on that where I'm like, dude, you look out your fucking window, people are getting shot or whatever. It depends on where you live, but there's always some real thing that's occurring. So luckily I don't really have any of that. I sometimes I get down, but my version of down is probably everybody else's version of really, really excited. Because admittedly, I didn't know I had this much energy amongst my friends. I just thought I was high energy. And then when I got on YouTube and other people were like, oh my fucking God, dude, it's 3 a.m. and you're on Discord talking to people. And then, you know, at 11 that night, I'm still talking. I'm like, is this a bot? How is this possible for one person? And then I realized, oh yeah,
you probably just high energy. That or like,
and I love games, man. I love games, movies, entertainment. Like when we're talking about this stuff, like when I'm
It's
working
exciting.
out, I'll be like, dude, fucking, I'll be working out for hours being like, I get to play a game, blah, blah, blah. And people will be like,
That's
dude,
where
why
I
are you
get my
talking
best.
when you're working out? And I'm like, yeah, but it's the best. It's so exciting.
I was talking to my friend John Blevins because I was up at his place over the spring break when all this, like after all the crazy games were released, we're all kind of hanging out. It ended up being kind of this mini retreat March Madness thing. It was awesome. Bunch of people, like especially after being kind of isolated for COVID, it was just like hanging out. Really good for like sometimes it's just good to kind of get with a bunch of dudes and just like drink beer and eat wings. And I don't care for sports.
We do
but
cabins where I rent a cabin and we go and I try to get one with no internet, but now that's pretty hard to find in this world. The last time it took us 3 hours up in the woods to find a cabin that had no internet, and we just do board games, Dungeons and Dragons, because I DM games, and just hang out.
Yeah, he asked me, he's like, how do you consume so much content? It's like when I work out, like that's where I like to hit the podcast. Like I like to be like whether I'm
you
doing
can turn
like
a podcast
weights,
on,
just like going, and it's very like enjoyable, like it's very relaxing. And you're right, like that's one of the things that I can feel like as I like when I look over the course of when I get so busy, because I get so busy, just like I can get in my head and like, I got to work, I got to do this. I'm about to be doing T-ball with the boys and it's like, and then
and I don't have kids, admittedly. That's a huge, I have 4 dogs,
fun,
but
though.
that
Like,
ain't the same thing.
Well, I mean, for me, like when we talk about our passion for games, like it's really fun for me to sit down with the kids. Now, obviously that does limit the games I can play, but we're playing Smash Brothers, playing multiverses with the kids. Let's be honest,
you like those games anyway.
I do.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like my wife likes Skylanders, and I love it. I don't know why. I just love the saccharine look of everything and having gauntlet style gameplay and characters. And so we were playing it, and I was like, I would play this on my own. So it's even doubly cool if you have a kid who likes, and you can.
And then they get excited about it. So it's like sometimes we actually just did the first Star Wars movie, New Hope, with my oldest, and that was awesome. Like it was just like it's to be able to kind of share in that.
And while kids are sarcastic, they're not like us where they have 100 grudges they hold against everything. Right. And so when they do see a game, like I've had cousins who were really young, were playing like the menu screen, like, or some loading game between the loading screens. They were playing it and they thought that was the game. And you're like, no, we haven't got to the game. That's like the mini thing. And then they jump in and they play these amazing games, and they're really actually pretty. It's cool to see that unadulterated love for something where they're just happy.
Well, it's like, so that's where Game Pass has actually been a huge like gift to us, because it's like played the Paw Patrol game. Dude, with them. I would never have spent $1 on it.
Dude,
and
it's
Game
like,
Pass,
the legit beast.
Yeah. Oh, dude. And the kids just absolutely loved it. And I remembered, like, you ever remember playing like the Lion King on SNES back in the day?
Absolutely. Lion King, all of the old stuff, Aladdin, King.
And I was like, I loved it. And then it's like, I look back at it as an adult and I go, that's not a good game. Like I wouldn't want to spend money on that today.
This happens to me all the time because I play older games, not in emulation periods, but I'll play older games to do the walking the walk videos. Because I want to see where things have changed. And I love Assassin's Creed Syndicate. It's one of my favorite Assassin's Creed games. And I was doing a walking the walk for Valhalla, and I got into my Discord and somebody was like, I just wish the Assassin's Creed games went back to the way they were. And I was like, from a person who just recently played those, I'm going to tell you right now, you may want to check yourself, because even though I love, and my favorites are those older ones, 1 or 2 of those older ones, they were not the gold, standard that you thought they were, because they were at a time frame. There was a different time frame, and there was a different expectation from your HUD, even, let alone the interactivity with the parts. You'll get that happening all the time, where people will be like, this old game was the best. And you're like, have you played it in a while? Oh no, I haven't played it in years. And I'm like, well, then be prepared, because that's all we had at the time. And as you get more influence in all these other titles, there is something to be said for some quality of life you sometimes get in a newer title too.
Yeah.
Like a save game.
Yeah. By the way, excellent job on the walking the walk with the Valhalla.
Thanks. That was a blast.
Creed. That was such a great. Like I enjoyed that.
Any views, but I mean, not what I was hoping for. But they're my favorite videos to do. I took a master class on Viking history. Yeah, and
I could tell. Like it was like it felt like there's just so much that I was just like, this could be a show.
It was
like
9 hours too.
Yeah, it was epic. It was such.
I cut it to 3, but I did 9 hours of it, and I was like, people are going to bitch because I didn't have a lot of reviews. And at the time the channel was going weird. So I cut it to 3, but dude, those are a blast when you can jump in. And Ubisoft, hey, have all the complaints you want, but
Mhm.
sometimes their ability to put a world together and their history and what they do, hiring developers to go to Norway and investigate old ruins and stuff like that, to me, that's the juice.
Yeah.
That's friggin'. And I found out they were one of the first companies. I think it was the first Watch Dogs Walking the Walk I did.
Oh,
When I
yeah.
found out from their dev team, they went to Chicago and listened to people on cell phones and just listened to what people sound like on a phone versus to the person in front of them walking down the street, and being
Mhm.
able to mimic that in their game.
Yeah.
So that people knew there's a difference, because there is difference when you're talking to somebody disembodied, how you
Yeah.
throw your voice into the cell phone versus how you talk to a friend and all this
Exactly.
stuff. It's so fun.
Exactly. So, hey, tell people where they can find you. Obviously, I think I got
Angry
you tagged.
Centaur Gaming on YouTube or ACG. I think if you just search ACG, it'll show up. And then Twitter is Jeremy Penter, my name. And then on Spotify, iTunes, and all that stuff, it's ACG, the best gaming podcast, which, yes, sounds egotistical, but I couldn't come up with any other name. So I just said, what's the best gaming podcast? That's what we'll do. So that's what it's called right now. It sounds so egotistical when I say it, but it actually worked pretty well.
You got to
But yeah, the
clickbait
best gaming
somehow.
podcast.
You got to like
Well, and
you got to
that's
get that
what
sensationalized click.
Yeah,
there.
I was like, it used to be called the International Podcast because that's where everybody's from a different nation. But I was like, it's sort of dry. We were actually going to call it, because a lot of people think we're blue collar, even though like Silver and I are not. I think none of us are. But I was like, that would be cool. I think it's already taken, right? Blue Collar Podcast, I think, is already taken.
Who knows?
Who knows these days? Yeah,
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to look at something that you want to name, and there's always something that's stolen that name? It doesn't. You can call it like Purple Hyena Horseshoe, and you'll look it up, and there'll be a company called that in like Africa, and you're like, damn it,
doggone it.
Yeah, but that's where you can find me, and definitely appreciate you coming on, man. It was awesome.
Man, it's always
inviting me on. Sorry.
Well, it's always a great time hanging out with you, dude. We sometimes have some of the most amazing conversations. And I was like, we kept like, so just for like inside baseball, like we've been trying to like schedule this for 6 months, and then most of it's been on me. Like I just like, I can't make it. I've actually been on 2 of your podcasts more than I was even doing this. Like I was like trying to
gotcha.
Yeah, all this year, because it was like, I need to get with Carrick. Like it's like we did some stuff last year, and it's like, man, I haven't talked to him. Like, and then I was on your podcast like twice. And I wasn't doing this, like I was saying, like because I was like, okay,
if I get stepped away a little bit.
Well, it was like, do I get the 4 things? What do I want to do? And I'm sitting here like trying to also figure out like for the hours that I have, like, and the things that I want to make, where does that time need to go? And it's like, and then the YouTube algorithm is just like just literally kicking my butt. Like it was just like, and I was just like, all right, I'm gonna go work. I'm gonna go work on billable, like at code. Because that's where
like, something you can code to somebody else and know you're going to get paid for. YouTube's one of the only ones you can put your heart and soul and the hardest work on, and the damn thing it will still not do well.
Oh yeah,
Beanie Bros,
Beanie Bros, baby.
You need a little bit longer beard. We can be beard and Beanie Bros.
I like it nice and tight like this. Yeah,
you know what? I do sometimes, but for 30 years, man, I wasn't able to grow a beard. All my jobs were long sleeve shirts. We were in like executive protection. All that stuff.
You were not. They were saying no to that.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, it was pretty much. It was very close to military for a long. And so like the day I got out of that, I just was like, okay, it's going, because dude, I was growing a beard at 13. Like it was ridiculous. I came out of my mom with a beard, probably.
There's some lore that is shown off for the upcoming Ashes of Creation, where the dwarves are actually born with beards in their skulls.
My god, really?
Yeah. So the dwarves are like, and so like, but then as they age, the beard grows out of their skin, and so the beard is attached to their physical skull. It's so wild and so crazy.
That's sort of gross.
It is, but it's cool. Like it just like anyway. I'm a nerd. Like when it comes to all that stuff. So guys, that's gonna be it for us today. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the podcast as well. Thanks for tuning in live. Thanks for the likes. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, share, as well as check us out on MP3 wherever podcasts are found. Until next time, or next Wednesday. I hear the kids knocking. We'll see you then.
Peace out.
And so that, guys, that's it. I'm gonna have to. I hear the kids banging on the door. I'm 10 minutes over. My wife needs me. She needs me to tap in so she can have some quiet time.
All right, man. Have a good one. Thanks for inviting me. Dude.